Metta is really connected to this concept we talk about so much in our practice, aversion. And aversion is one of the 3 poisons of Mahayana Buddhism, the 3 poisons that get in the way of happiness, the 3 poisons that cause suffering: hatred, greed, and delusion. Hatred, greed, and delusion. Or aversion, lust, and confusion. There's different ways that it's identified, which is nice. Hatred being the pushing away, greed being the clinging, and delusion being in a state of not knowing what's going on. So metta is the antidote for this particular poison. So you have the 3 poisons, and aversion is the first, and we'll talk about that today. And it's antidote of metta. So I'm going to put up on the screen for your viewing a definition of aversion. All right. So from the American Heritage Dictionary, aversion is dislike, repugnance. The avoidance, number 3 in the definition, the avoidance of a thing, situation, or behavior because it's been associated with an unpleasant or painful stimulus. So it's avoidance, aversion. That's in the English language. In the Pali understanding, it gets more in depth, it's more subtle. In the Buddhist understanding, aversion is, yes, it's when we want to avoid something, and it's mental formation when we get angry with people who get between us and the things we want, or we get jealous of the people who have things that we don't have. We hate things that frighten us or seem to pose a threat to us. And hatred, aversion, these are all the similar movements of the heart. Anger, aggression, hatred. And the opposite wholesome quality is metta, loving kindness. Non-aggression or lack of hatred. So it's one of the principal aims of our practice is to cultivate the opposite of aversion. But you need to know what aversion is before you can cultivate the opposite of it. So one of the one of the places that we experience a lot of aversion is in relationships, and it's with the difficult people. So I'm going to read a quote to you from this book, The Boundless Heart. This paragraph really struck me because it points to how instructional, how helpful difficult people are for us, or are wonderful people when they become difficult. This is just a practice ground for us. She writes, "The difficult person. People insult and betray us, offend and irritate us, and at times deeply harm us with their thoughts, words, and acts. We in turn engage in heroic efforts and strategies to keep the difficult people in our lives at a distance, to avoid them, and to shut them out of our lives. Even when physically successful in doing this, they haunt our thoughts and our dreams. We have difficult people in our past, we will meet difficult people in the present, And we'll all have our own measure of difficult people in our future. It is the domain of human relationship where we most clearly perceive, feel, and at times are overwhelmed by aversion. It's the domain of the human relationship where this movement of the mind is most prevalent. So if you didn't meet any difficult people over Thanksgiving, it's fine. You'll find them. They're everywhere, right? I like to think sometimes it's like playing whack-a-mole. You know, as a practitioner, we're trying to come to the place where we don't have feelings of ill will towards others. This is the noblest part of the practice. Can I be loving towards all beings? And you feel like you've just about got it, and then another one pops up, and then another one, and you get that one taken care of, and then another one comes. It's like that game at the amusement park where you have to keep hitting them with the hammer. Sometimes it feels like that. But it's not like that. That's more aversion. That's more giving in to the energy of wanting to get rid of the difficult things. So practicing metta is more like a training ground, I would say. When you practice in this way, these sometimes artificial feeling phrases, but that you can sense something real in there, but sometimes too it feels artificial. But the practice, what it does is it strengthens your discernment. How close can I stand to this difficult person? Stand meaning in your heart. Right? Metta is not about trying to change difficult people or situations into easy things. That's not what it's about. It's not about, like, you can't change someone else's mind. You can try. You can't change their behaviors often. You can't change their heart, the way they feel. Just like other people can't really do that for you. Maybe somebody says something and it causes you to change your heart or your mind, but the other person isn't actually doing it. You change your heart and mind. But metta really strengthens your discernment. It strengthens your capacity to know how close or how far you need to be to feel safe engaging. But in order to know to know yourself this way, you have to get familiar with your own aversion. And it's kind of like aversion is like a constriction, right? It's like I'll give you an example. So, and this isn't a person, but it's a situation. And as I said at the beginning, it's very similar, just that people usually cause stronger feelings for us. But here's a situation where I had a lot of aversion last night when I woke up. My mom's dog, her 2-year-old, who's just a real sweet creature, was in the forest with me yesterday, and she's a bundle of joy and energy. And when you let her run in the forest, you feel in your heart, it just soars. You see this pure joy. And we go to the park a lot. and she runs a lot. My dog is older and doesn't do that anymore. So I live vicariously through this creature. And at some point, she must have slipped on something. It was sleeting yesterday. It was very slippery. And she cried out. She screamed, I would say, and she came down the hill barely walking. And from that moment on, her whole demeanor changed. She had impaled her leg muscle on the inside of her leg with a stake. I thought she had broken her leg. She couldn't even walk. And I picked her up, and she was frozen, and it was a shock. She was in shock, and I ended up carrying her back to the car, and Mom and I took her to the hospital, and they did a surgery, and I think she's going to be okay. But the scene continues to replay. You know, this innocent creature that you love so much and full of joy, and then in one breath, the fragility of life is in your face. The fragility of life, how things change so quickly. And you know, it's us. We're just like her, and it's disconcerting, and it's very easy to have aversion to this. So, for example, each time this thought came up in my mind, I literally was turning my head away. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to. The scene kept replaying, the jumping with joy, and then the stumbling down in pain. And so I kept turning away. And that is aversion. We don't want to face, we're not comfortable facing the difficult things. But it's like imprisoning yourself. When you turn away, you try and make a lemonade out of the lemons, you are turning away from, it's like sweeping a dead mouse under the rug. The mouse is still going to be there when everybody goes home. And that mouse is your aversion, and it festers. A lot of people find themselves thinking about the people they dislike way more than the people that they love, for example. And this is because our aversion has taken a hold of us. We're trying to push away, and the more we push away and try and get rid of, the more it occupies us. And these rejections and judgments of these other people, they can lead us to even doubt ourselves. So metta is concerned with uprooting aversion. You could almost say it's a purification of the mind. Martin Luther King so famously said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And our aversion, our turning away is in the same bucket. We hate that, and so we want it to go away. Rumi, the Sufi master, he writes, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. and I would like to see you in better accommodations. So our thoughts that we have right now, when you think of something, this thought that I'm having now may relate to something that happened in the past, and it's happening in the present moment. So thoughts that are occurring in the present moment are the result of what we were in the past or what we did in the past. Right? What will be, how will be in the future, therefore, is the result of what's happening now. So our thoughts in the present moment create our future. And in this moment is always based on the past. The future is always based on this moment. So there's this common thread that the present moment is really, really important. And, if you can't stop thinking about things, which I have my share of that addictive quality, that's when you can engage metta. That's when it's time to engage metta. It's a concentration practice. The human mind cannot hold two thoughts at the same time. The scientists have proven it. We can bounce back and forth really fast, but you can only hold one thing in your mind at one time. The human mind can also you can't not think. The mind is always needs something to chew on. So we interrupt this pattern of thinking, the unskillful thinking that comes up in our lives regularly. We interrupt it with metta. And you find that you can change the past. I love to say you can't time travel. You can't do it. So, when people are like, oh, I should have done this. I'm like, well, that's great. But they haven't invented the time machine yet. So, what are we going to do? With metta, you can change the past. You can time travel because you can change your relationship to your memories. You can change your relationship to how you think about the things that happened in the past because you're in the present moment and you can do something about it right now. You can change your relationship to your memories. According to Buddha, he said, liberating your heart with metta is like freeing yourself from financial debt. He likens anxiety, worry, preoccupation, contraction to being financially in debt. And he asks, imagine what it would feel like to repay your debts. Maybe you've had that situation when you've had a financial debt and you finally repaid it, and how wonderful that felt. Metta is like having a wad of cash in your hand. But you have to ask yourself, what do I need to let go of today? How can I let go of that? So the practice again is, we did it in our meditation this morning. It actually takes on many forms. So in the middle of the night when I was reliving over and over again my walk with Mom's dog, that sort of, it's kind of a traumatic moment, I would say. I said, why don't I apply some metta here and see what happens? Let me just take the pill. And how am I going to do that? Well, I brought the dog into my mind, seeing her, because we set her up at Mom's house last night. And I imagined her walking around, stumbling around a little bit, and I said, hey, may you be safe. Little doggy, may you be safe. May you be, I didn't say happy and content because I figured that's impossible. I said, may you be peaceful in the midst of this. May you be peaceful in the midst of this. May you be healthy and strong. I don't know if dogs can be, I think dogs are very mindful all the time, but may you have ease. So it was kind of a silly, it seemed silly at the moment because I was like, I don't know that sending a dog metta makes sense, but I can assure you that after having done it, it makes a ton of sense. It was very helpful. Sending her present moment wishes for peace in the midst of what she's going through. And this is powerful. For example, when I read a story in the newspaper of an attack, for example, and I read people have been killed, and I imagine maybe a mother having just lost children because of war. There's a natural wanting to just put the paper away and just go have a cup of coffee. But instead, you can pause and you can send that mother some metta. May you be safe in the midst of all of that. May you be safe. May you be at peace. May you have some small measure of peace in the midst of what you're going through. May you find a small measure of peace. I think of the young men in my Friday class and the difficulties they have just getting a job after being incarcerated. It's very, very challenging. And I can turn away and say, it'll be all okay. But no, pause and send metta. May you be safe as you're going through this. May you have peace in the midst of your struggle. May you be strong. May you be courageous. Well, I'll end by mentioning that this is actually very important. Two things, really. The first is that pay attention, because a lot of times the difficult person can be yourself. A lot of times we can be dismissive of our feelings or critical of our failings. And it seems like the right thing to do, to criticize oneself. You say, well, if I let myself off too easy, then I won't ever get better. But it is actually much more powerful to take care of yourself and to honor the feelings you have, the difficulties you're going through, to honor them, to send yourself that metta. May I be peaceful in the midst of this. May I be safe in the midst of this. May I be strong and healthy. May I have ease in the midst of this. So when the difficult person is yourself, apply the metta to yourself. The third and most difficult aspect of the three marks of existence, the third and final one that is so hard to understand, is this idea that we aren't separate from one another. And when we can send metta to others, it actually is living in our own hearts, and it makes us better. And when we send metta to ourselves, it actually radiates out into others. So it's one and the same. After a while, you start to feel this. So this relationship you have with yourself, the self-talk that you engage in, is like a microcosm, and it flavors all your relationships. And since we're with ourselves a lot of the day, it's a good place to practice metta.